My name is Hannah, and this is my year of less stuff. Hey y'all, it's time for another video about new makeup releases and all my feelings about them. As I always do, have just picked a selection of the recent makeup releases that I feel like talking about. And actually in this video, there's something fun. I have in the past spotted trends in eyeshadow, and in this case, a trend like foisted itself upon me. I'll kind of tell it maybe story time style after the transition to the meat of the video. I was just going along minding my own business and this eyeshadow trend like smacked itself into my face, and I want to know if the same thing happened to any of you. If this is your first time clicking on one of my videos, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Hannah. I love beautiful things, but I don't love overspending on beautiful things, and I'm working hard not to normalize overspending on my channel. In the past, I was a person who overspent on beauty products and clothes, and it took me a long time to recover from that. So here I keep a balance between appreciating and loving beauty and not going overboard and spending ourselves into oblivion. So if that sounds good to you, I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. Let's go ahead and get into the meat of the video. Okay, story time. A couple of days ago, I was scrolling through Instagram, minding my own business, playing Candy Crush, living my best life. I'm just kidding, I wasn't playing Candy Crush. I was scrolling through Instagram, living. I can't actually say that I was living my best life either, because who is living her best life these days? I was scrolling through Instagram, minding my own business. I do love Teresa is Dead, and gosh, it'll be great when I can say once again that I'm living my best life. But what happened was, first I came across this beautiful swatch video from my friend Amanda. She has a YouTube channel, Makeup Just for Fun, and she also has a robust, flourishing Instagram account, and she does beautiful product photography. So she photographed the most recent release from Colourpop, the Garden Variety palette, and I scrolled past this swatch photo, which I will now put up on the screen, and I was like, Amanda, you shouldn't have. I was like, wow, it's so beautiful. One thing that really struck me about this particular photo is that the dark brown in the palette at the very bottom is kind of green. It's like a green tinged deep brown. And that color of eyeshadow, that like deep, rich, swampy, ucky, mucky, icky, greenish brown. It really not even a greenish brown. It is a brown. It's just a brown that has some green in it. That really gets me going. Like that's one of the things that I'm really into in makeup. So that's cool. But that's kind of a side note, because really when I looked at this, I just noticed that the color story seemed pretty innovative for me right now. Like to me, I was like, oh, I'm not seeing this all over the place. Little did I know what was about to happen to me. But I'm like, wow, I'm not seeing this all over the place. I feel like they did a really good job. I'm not about to like buy a Colourpop palette over here, so it's not like I looked at this and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go buy that. If anything, I could probably dupe the vibes of this using the eyeshadows that I already have, but that's not even really what this led me to want to do. I just looked at it and I appreciated it. I was like, nice, good job, Colourpop. Less boring than most of the eyeshadow palettes that they've come out with so far this year. So then I kept scrolling on Instagram, and almost immediately the next thing that came up was the collaboration between Sydney Grace and Mel Thompson, the Tiny Marvels palette. And once again, I was like, wow, beautiful. But immediately I was like, and what? Like, it isn't the same. It isn't exactly the same, but it's so coming from the same place. Just in terms of the color story, the overall feeling of the palette, especially when you look at the swatches. I will put the swatch photo from Legally Black Beauty, which is a great Instagram account. Highly recommend following Legally Black Beauty. But looking at these swatches and then thinking back to the swatches from the Colourpop palette, again, it's not the same. I think a lot of the colors that are matte in this palette were shimmers in the Colourpop palette version, but overall the feeling. And I don't know, I feel a little bit disgruntled. I mean, this is a situation where we know that nobody copied each other, right? I think that they were released on pretty much the same day. And even though Colourpop turns product around really fast, there's no way that they can be accused of having like stolen inspiration. Even though the inspiration in terms of the color story, the inspiration is uncannily the same between the two palettes. I'm a little bit disgruntled on Mel's behalf and on behalf of Sydney Grace, because this to me is, again, such a fresh color story and also very seasonal, very, very beautifully done. clearly Mel and Sydney Grace have their fingers on the pulse of what is going to be next in makeup, because just as they were launching this, a bunch of other brands, as you'll see as I continue through, seems like they've had the same idea. They were like thinking along the same lines and reached a similar conclusion. These swatches are so rich and delicious, and I only have a couple of Sydney Grace shadows, and I've been digging into them from time to time. They're mixed in with my singles rather than being like set aside as like a little Sydney Grace section. But every once in a while, I'll be using one of my single shadows and I'll be like, what is this? It's like so pigmented and so creamy and so easy to work with. And then I'll look on the back of the shadow and it'll be Sydney Grace. And it happened to me recently with the single shadow in the shade Defiance. I have it. It was a gift from a subscriber back in the day when I was still accepting subscriber gifts in the mail. And I did a one shadow look. I just put that shadow all over my lids. And the last couple videos that you've seen from me, my check-in and my empties video, I had that was the eye look. I didn't have any other eyeshadow on my lids besides that one from Sydney Grace. I just find it so impressive. And you can see the quality in these swatches, and I'm sure that it's a stunning palette. I would pick this one 100,000 times over the Colourpop one simply because of quality, even though I really love Colourpop shadows too. This just looks like they did an amazing job, and I'm excited to see it. And again, I'm excited by the color story, not excited enough to want to immediately click over and immediately buy it. I feel like I'm super saturated with eyeshadow palettes as it is, so even things that really kind of excite me aren't quite exciting me enough to get me to buy them these days. But I do think this is beautiful. Huge congratulations to Mel. I mean, awesome, awesome job. I love the inspiration too. Bugs, nature, marvelous things. I absolutely love it. Beautiful in every way. And then just, you know, a little bit shocking that it was Cheek by Jowl on my Instagram feed with that palette from Colourpop on the same day. So I was like, I went through all of what I've just told you and I was like, I'm looking forward to talking about this in my video about new makeup releases. Then I kept scrolling and almost immediately came across the Instagram post of, I think, a makeup artist who also has her own brand. She makes her own makeup and she sells it on Etsy. Her name is Monique Boulay, MUA. She just released a new palette inspired by the television show The Office. And I'll put a picture of the palette here. I was just like, what the butt? And maybe it's just that mint green. Maybe it's just that mint green that's getting me all across the board. It's like these sort of semi-colorful, muted, colorful palettes that have some pinks and some purples and some browns and have that sort of, you know, green and like, you know, the colors of like flowers in a green garden with dirt. You know, all of these palettes have that. And then there's a mint green, like a matte mint green that feels like a pop of green. But I think that to say that these palettes have like a pop of mint green is doing them a disservice, because I do feel like this color story is a little bit more well conceived than just, you know, neutrals with a pop of X. They aren't really neutral palettes. They're interesting. The color story is interesting. That's part of why I took note of it and why I wanted to talk about it. But how weird is this, that this palette, which again, Monique Boulay, MUA, has been designing this whole time, just launched pretty much on the same day as these other palettes, and it has so much in common with them. It's uncanny. So by this time I was like, I have a really good story now to tell my peeps. I was like, three palettes all on the same day on my Instagram feed within inches of each other in my scrolls that all are sort of like singing the same song. And then I was like, continuing to scroll after I chuckled to myself. And almost the very next thing that I came across was this post from Adept Cosmetics. One of the things that's fun about following Adept on Instagram is that they'll put together little color stories with singles and put them as inspiration on their page. And so when I'm going through my feed, I'll come across like these inspirational color combinations. Temptalia also does that on her Instagram. I think that that's really lovely. So there's this little inspo and the title says Random Color Story. And I don't doubt that that's what it was. I think that at Adept, they put this little color story together, took a picture, and they were like, this seems cute, it seems fresh, it seems of the moment, and it is indeed very beautiful. and very, very evocative of what I had just been seeing on my feed, those palettes that had all just been released on the same day. It's not quite the same, but there is like this matte mint green, a little bit darker, but still a matte mint green, a brighter mint green. And then there's that azalea pink, cheek by jowl with these sort of like grungy bronzes and browns, and a yellow, which the Office palette from Monique Boulay MUA also had. And I was like, and then that's kind of the end of it. Like those four were the ones that really blew my mind. But then as I kept scrolling, I came across this new palette from Morphe, and it feels like they had a similar idea. There's not quite the same exact matte green, but still, it's like neutrals mixed with rich pastels, plenty of browns, and then greens and purples as well, and a little bit of that, the nod to like pink flowers, like azaleas blooming. I think you could describe this Morphe palette with all of the same words, but it's definitely a weaker version. It's watered down, you know, compared to the other ones that I'm talking about that are all on this train. It's watered down compared to them, both because it's like more unwieldy because it's bigger and it's also more pale. I think it's the least interesting of the bunch, but it still kind of belongs in the same conversation. How wild is that? I feel like this is definitely an example of trends being subterranean and then all kind of like bursting through the Earth's crust at the same time. I mean, not trends, like the trend is the fact that all of these ideas, these palettes, this color story and all of its different iterations across brands and across brains, that was subterranean, and then they all burst through at the same time, through the Earth's crust and into the light of day. And we were all like, you know, the garden inspired palette with mint green mattes is upon us, help. So did anyone else notice this? What are your thoughts? Have you seen any other palettes or color stories on social media or being released from brands that also belong on this train, things that I missed? Because again, the story I'm telling you, it's something that it happened like all within 5 minutes. Like these things were all on my Instagram feed within 5 minutes of each other. So there might be other ones cropping up in other places that were just, you know, a day or two before, a day or two after, even just within this same month. It seems like a pretty sudden and aggressive trend in eyeshadow. And it even occurred to me that there might be something going on that's similar with the palette that I built recently. So I posted a video, one of my overhead shot videos, where I filmed myself close up building this palette. And I went into the project being like, oh, I am just going to put together kind of a neutral palette. And this does work as a neutral palette for me because there are so many neutrals in it. And I've been building neutral looks from it day in and day out since I created it. But it does have pops of some of the same things. So this kind of minty green, this is actually a metallic. It's from a Depotted Juvia's Place palette, but it definitely, I feel like the presence of this kind of color is what sort of defines this trend. And then it also has that purple, and it has some pinks, and it has, you know, these sort of grubby, earthy browns that are really beautiful. It also has this really deep greenish brown, or I guess would be like sort of a blackened green rather than a greenish brown, but it ties it in, I feel like, with those other palettes. This is Sydney Grace Defiance, actually, the one that I was talking about that I had all over my lids in the past couple of videos. But don't you think that even just this color story of 5 that's on my little fingies right here, don't you think that this is resonant with that trend? And yet I built this palette days before the moment that I'm telling you about, when I stumbled across all of these things in short order on Instagram. It's so amazing how connected our minds are. I mean, I always do this. I get makeup on my fingers when I'm filming. This is the part you don't see. Behind the scenes of every YouTube video is a lot of time spent cleaning off one's fingies. Have you noticed that I decided to stop cleaning up my vanity before I film? In the old days, I used to like tidy it up and be like, I'm actually really organized, and I don't know, I'm just over it. This is my real life. Okay, moving on. Speaking of Morphe, so not really moving on, I guess. Continuing on. Speaking of Morphe, are we interested in Morphe too? Like, who's interested in Morphe too? All I've seen is some people besmirching it and rolling their eyes, and then crickets. Like, I've actually been really surprised at how little I've seen of Morphe 2 on beauty YouTube and how few reviews I've seen crop up. I think I saw that Kathleen Lights had reviewed it, and I think that might be the only video that I've seen on my feed. Granted, I might not be paying close enough attention. There might be others that I've missed. I'm kind of interested in Morphe 2. I am kind of a sucker for like brands that are trying to like create a glossier inside of their own brand. I'm curious about it. And there was a brief wild moment there during which I was like, I'm gonna review Morphe 2. And I went to the website and I like put a couple things in the cart. And then I got to the pots of cream cheek. It's like this pot, I don't know what they're calling it, but it's in a little pot, a product that works on cheeks and eyes. And it was all of the colors were sold out. And I was like, I think it was the launch day. And I was like, well, if I can't review that product along with the other ones in the review, then it kind of loses its interest for me, because I feel like that's the product that I'm the most qualified to review, because it's the kind of product that I'm really interested in. And really, the fact that they released a product like that completes my interest in the brand. It's what really drums up the intrigue for me. Although I am interested in the complexion product, the skin tint. I have very little regard for Morphe. Like I own very little from Morphe, and I don't really pay that much attention to what they do. They have not managed to do anything that's grabbed my attention for a long time. And this did. I was just like, Morphe, you shouldn't have. You filled out nicely over the summer, Morphe. I don't know. I don't think I'm going so far here as to be like, do you want me to review Morphe 2? Because even if some of you say that you do, I probably still don't. I think that I'm just bringing this up because these are all my feelings about Morphe 2. My feelings are that I got really interested in it, considered reviewing it, and then the bubble popped when it turned out that I wasn't able to like order one of each of the products because they were all selling out. And then after that, I was kind of like, and I don't really feel like reviewing Morphe 2. We're done. Oh, this is interesting. ABH has launched this K-Beauty product. That's how those are all my feelings about this lip tint. So they're calling it the Lip Stain, a new lipstick formula, lightweight, pigmented. It will add a tip to your lip. It'll add a tint to your lip, and then it dries down completely. It's partly the nature of the product, the way they're describing this product, that is reminiscent to me of K-Beauty formulas. But it's also the packaging, this monochromatic packaging. It looks a little bit matte, it looks a little bit soft touch, and then the boxes match the packaging. This isn't very ABH to me, the way that they've done this. The packaging of the unit cartons, like the boxes, and also the packaging of the product itself, the tube, you know what I mean? The thing, the packaging. What is the word? There's a word that I'm forgetting. Or is there a word that I'm forgetting? I'm gonna move forward because if there is, I can't remember it. Anyway, all of it is reminiscent to me of specifically 3CE, which is a K-Beauty brand that I actually really quite like. Here's the 3CE Velvet Lip Tint. Don't even try to tell me that this does not look quite a lot like this product that ABH is releasing in every way. And of course, monochromatic soft touch packaging it's not like 3CE invented it. Like it's not like it's brand new, but it does seem like someone on the ABH team was like, let's go in a different direction with the aesthetic for this product launch. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was actually like an articulated plan to make a product that's reminiscent of K-Beauty lip tints, because it's an iconic type of product. It's an iconic type of product in the K-Beauty world. They're branching out into that in terms of the kind of product they're making. And then they've also done the same thing with the packaging. And I understand why they did it, because it looks stunning. It works. It works on me. I'm all about this monochromatic, soft touch packaging life. I don't really like lip tints, the kind of lip stain that they're talking about. I do really like these 3CE products because they don't stain, like they don't like set into the lips and stain with that like wine stainy thing that on me always ends up just looking fluorescent pink. But I bet that these ABH products do that. Do that. Anyway, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in buying any of these ABH lip stains. But I did do a little bit of a double take when I was scrolling, because I was like, Ooh, the Wayne Goss palette. This is another thing that I had that moment where I was like, maybe I should review this. You guys know that I have been doing a thing where about once a month I pick something that I want to review on YouTube, and my channel has a budget for buying about one thing a month, just so that I can make sure that I'm reviewing not only PR on my channel, but also stuff that I decided would, make good content. And I did, for a hot minute there, consider putting that budget towards this Wayne Goss palette. I think the main reason that I decided not to, actually, the main reason is probably just what I was saying before about eyeshadow palettes. I'm just super saturated with eyeshadow palettes, so even if something looks truly perfect for me in every way, which, spoiler alert, this really does. Like, I am the target audience, and I'll go into why that is the case in a second. But even when that's the case with an eyeshadow palette, I'm really hard pressed to like get it up to buy one, even for a review. But then the other thing is that a lot of people got this in advance of the launch. So I started seeing a bunch of videos on YouTube of people reviewing this like the day before it launched or the day that it did launch. And I was like, by the time I got it to review, it would be old news. And the fact that would be fine with me. I've done that. I did that like with the Fenty blushes.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Gal. Today we're going to
the joys of living in a studio apartment.
Thought it was plugged in.
What was I even talking about?
I can't help you because I wasn't listening.
Oh yeah, I was saying that the fact that my review would be late or like wouldn't be, as timely as other people's reviews, that's not a deterrent for me. All things being equal is not a deterrent. Like I did that with the Fenty blushes. I reviewed them like weeks after they had already launched. And a lot of you really appreciated the video, still watched it. We're still glad that I had filmed it. So yeah, I mean, if I had really wanted to, if I was like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect product for me to review, I really have something to add to the conversation, I absolutely want to do this, it wouldn't have been a deterrent. But the combination of the fact that I was sort of maybe on the fence about whether I really wanted to review it and the fact that there are already so many great reviews out there. So all of that together meant that the idea was short-lived. I did not order it. I'm not planning to. But it is kind of like my perfect capsule palette. And I can tell that just by looking. I feel like I didn't need to review it to tell that that's true. And I can also put this together. Like I could put it together myself out of my own singles. I have different iterations of every eyeshadow that's in this. And so I could easily just make a little capsule palette myself that would serve the same purpose. And I have so much makeup already and so much eyeshadow already that it doesn't really make sense to just get it because it would be so ideal, because it's just exactly what I need and I could travel with it as if like that's a thing that I'm doing. And, I could just reach for it. It would be so effortless. All of that same stuff can be said about any little palette that I put together of my own accord with my singles. But when I put it together myself, it has the advantage of the fact that I could throw in a multi-chrome or a pressed glitter. I could throw in, anything else that I wanted to spice it up. So in practical terms, in terms of like me buying this palette, in practical terms for me, the life that I'm living right now, I can acknowledge that it's perfect for me in absolutely every way, but still not need to or want to buy it because it's perfect for me in every way except for the fact that I already have what I need to create the eye looks that I would be creating with it. If I were someone with less eyeshadow, if I were still me, but I had a much smaller collection, if I wasn't on YouTube, if I wasn't, constantly sort of like rearranging singles and depotting palettes and all of this stuff, then it might actually be a really good buy for me. And part of why I wanted to review it was just in acknowledgement of that fact, that it's sort of like a perfect palette for a Hannah in isolation or like a Hannah in an alternate universe. And the reason that it's perfect, sorry, I keep dragging this on and on, but the reason that it's perfect is it's got a black in it. And I almost always use a black to deepen up my outer corners, smoke it out, help just to change the shape of my hooded eyes, open up my eyes. I don't always use it as black. I use it as a mixer to darken whatever shadow I'm already using on my lids and use that in the outer corners. So I love that it has a black. A lot of makeup artists and makeup brands release palettes like this. There's a constant stream of palettes like this coming out onto the market, and they rarely include black because they think a lot of people don't know how to use it. I get a lot of requests for a video talking about like how I use black eyeshadow and demonstrating it. is that just a few people who keep requesting it, or is there like a serious interest in that? Let me know in the comment section down below. If a bunch of you down below are like, yes, yes to the video about black eyeshadow, I'll totally put it on my list of things to film because I do have I do have opinions about that. So it has the black, and then it has these beautiful like taupey neutrals, but most of them are shimmers. Like there's just like this one neutral, this one matte transition shade, which is a nice thing to have, but I feel like I don't need very many. I only need the one myself. And then there's like this nice shimmery peach, which I feel like could even be used as a blush. There's a pale color, which is really good for like fixing mistakes, I find, for me. And then there's this uber sparkly topper, which is the kind of thing that I super love. Natasha Denona Cava, Tom Ford Cream and Powder, and Naked Bronze. I took one look at this and I was like, bam, Wayne, you knocked it out of the park. This palette is a dreamboat. I love it. I think he did an incredible job. Like really couldn't be better. I have so much respect for and enthusiasm for this release. I just think it's beautiful. I could see myself having created a palette like this at some point. Like I just really, really vibe with it. It's just not in the cards for me to be buying it right now. Oh, this is another crowdsourced thing. I have a question. I have a desire that I've never had before, and it's a desire for a pastel blue or green eyeliner, like to put on the waterline. I don't have anything like that. I usually just work with like smudgy browns and blacks and a little bit of smudgy burgundy or taupe. Like I'm only ever doing that. I even do have kind of like a bright metallic blue, like a rich cobalt, and a bright metallic green eyeliner, and I never put them on my waterline. But lately I have been envisioning this waterline of like a Easter egg pastel blue and or green. It's a vision that's persisting. It's like a fantasy that's persisted. It keeps coming up over and over again. And I have no experience with that kind of product, so I don't know what the best one is. I'm putting up this picture from Colourpop. The blue and the green in this picture, that's kind of what I've been imagining. But I haven't had the best experience with Colourpop liners, and I do prefer liners that you can sharpen, like wooden liners. So I guess this is also a way of talking about Lady Gaga's new release, because she's coming out with liners too, and there are some colors like this in her line. Where should I go? Like what should I get? If I just want to get one really milky, like a really milky white undertoned creamy liner for my waterline in either like a mint. What I really think I want is like a very pale mint, kind of like that mint that's popping off in all of the eyeshadow palettes with the, you know, the garden azalea mint train that we talked about at the beginning of this video, kind of like that color. I think that that's what I want. Should I get the Colourpop one, or is there another one that you can recommend to me? Okay, and lastly, I just wanted to touch on Selena Gomez's brand Rare Beauty, which is coming out in Sephora. We don't know anything about it yet. Like literally we have not seen hide nor hair of the packaging or a formula or color, no swatches, no nothing. It's just Selena Gomez going like, and we know that it's going to launch in Sephora. And the reason that I put it in here, it's kind of like what I was saying about Morphe too. So I was scrolling through the comments on this Instagram post on Trend Mood, and someone was like, LOL, it's like Glossier by Selena Gomez. And everyone was like, har, har, har. That's exactly what I was thinking. And I think that the post was meant to like roll eyes or like poke fun at this launch, or kind of just being like, oh, come on, give us a break, or it's already been done. Or, you know, someone was basically saying like, I predict that it's going to be this, you know, no makeup thing, and so that sounds boring and it's not for me. And if I had wanted that, I would have gotten it at Glossier. Like I think that that's the spirit in which that comment was made. But when I saw that comment, I was like, really? Do you think so? I'm VV interested, because of what I was saying before. I'm interested in it when big brands come out with what they're trying to do as like a sort of Glossier subset of their brand, simply because I like that aesthetic. Cream blushes, like cream cheeks, glossy, wet looking skin, you know, kind of grungy mixed with natural, or natural with the opportunity to grunge it up with more intense makeup. I think I'm really into that aesthetic for like brows and cheeks and lips, basically everything except for eyes. And then I tend to kind of go in a grungier, deeper more makeup-y direction with my eyeshadow. I like Glossier, but I've tried a lot of stuff from their brand and I've pretty much exhausted my interest in them at this point. I mean, sometimes new products come out and I'm like, oh, I'll try that. And you know, I love the Vanillic lip. I recently tried it and I really, really love it. But Glossier, like they've already formulated their cream cheek, for example, the Cloud Paint. They're not going to come out with another cream cheek. And I'm really interested in other versions of that kind of thing. And so it's not going to come from Glossier. So I'm like looking at other brands. I love it when a brand launches that has that kind of aesthetic, or when a brand branches out into that kind of aesthetic. And I do think my prediction is along the lines of the prediction in that snarky comment. I do think that possibly what happened is that Sephora, you know, Sephora, the entity, was like, we need to have like an in-house Glossier, like a full range that we put our weight behind. I know that Sephora currently does carry, you know, products from brands here and there, or maybe small brands here and there that kind of evoke that aesthetic, or that you can use to get that same aesthetic. But I think that at some point, you know, a year or two ago, Sephora was like, we need to launch a new brand that will sweep all of the Glossier people, like the people who are interested in that kind of thing, bring them into Sephora. That will be like their home inside of Sephora, so we can, you know, get that coin. And they were like, let's find somebody who can represent the brand, who we can like build the brand in cahoots with, who will be like the face of it, and the kind of, I don't know, the sort of aesthetic muscle behind it, or the just general spirit, like the spirit behind it will come from that person. And they partnered up with Selena Gomez to do that. That's my prediction. I think it's going to feel like, you know, on the surface it's like Selena Gomez's brand, but really what's going on is Sephora is trying to be like, we have the goods, we have what Glossier was trying to sell you. You don't need to go to them anymore. You can come to us. So that's what I wanted to say about this brand. And then there's one more thing that I wanted to say, which is that I feel like I'm like, stop trying to make rare happen. Like that's how I feel. I think that they needed like some more opinions in the boardroom when they were coming up with the name. I do get it. Like rare beauty is a phrase. People are like, he's a rare beauty or she's rare beauty. I understand what they're trying to do. But if you look at the Instagram page for Rare Beauty, they have all of these like inspirational quotes using the word rare, and it just doesn't work for me. So yeah, the first post back in the day when they first created the Instagram page for the brand, it says, "You are rare." And like, I get it. They're trying to be like, you're an individual. Like rare means that it exists. Things like it exist. Like if you say, oh, that's a rare orchid, or like it's a rare flower in the jungle, you know, it means that they do exist. Like multiples of that flower exist, but you just don't come across one very often. So it's saying like you're rare. You're saying like, oh, your kind exists. Like people like you exist, beauties like you exist, but we just don't come across them very often. And it just doesn't, I feel like it does not mean what they think that it means. Like I guess in theory it's working. It's just, also it's a word for steak. It's like a word for meat. And that also is a little bit weird. It's like you're rare. It means like you're undercooked. Like, And then they keep trying with it. So here's a quote. When asked when I feel rare, now it's all the time because there's only one me and no one can take that from me. So she's saying like, in response to the question, do you feel rare? Which like, weird question. Like when was the last time someone asked you that question? Never. Do you feel rare? And then she's like, yes, I feel rare because there's only one me. But if there's only one of you, you're not rare. You're an individual. You're individual. Rare means that there are multiples of you. You just don't come across them very often. And here's another quote, and then I'm gonna stop. I know that I've really like gone off on this at the end. Sometimes we just need to be reminded how rare we actually are. I always tell myself, be you, be proud, be rare. Like that's a quote that they're claiming like came from someone. And I'm like, do you though? Like, do you always tell yourself, be proud, be rare? Because okay, I'm done. I am prepared to be interested in this brand and review it. If it indeed is kind of like evocative of Glossier, and if the price point isn't too high, I'm telling you, if they've got a cream cheek and a cream highlight, I'm going to be all up on that business reviewing it for you as soon as I can. So, you know, this quibble with the name is not to say that I'm like writing them off completely, or I think it's garbage before I even know what it is. I just thought it was hilarious. And that is it. That's all my feelings about all the new makeup launches that I felt like talking about. I can't wait to hear what you have to say in the comment section down below, because I have lots of questions for you about mint green Easter egg eyeliner, and there was something else I had a question about. Oh, Morphe 2, like how I feel about Morphe 2. There might even been something else. I can't remember. But yeah, whatever I said that I wanted to know. Oh, I remember what it was. The black eyeshadow video. That, I want to know if you want to know how I use black eyeshadow. So sound off in the comment section down below. Don't forget to tell yourself, be proud, be rare. And don't forget to take extra rare care of yourself right now so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work in the world.